Welcome back, and it's time now for Media Watch, and for that I'm joined by James Creedon. Hello, James.
Good evening, Annette.
We start with Madonna, who called on the public to vote for that well-known black Muslim,
Right.
otherwise known as the President of America.
Right. So either she's being really silly and like apparently 18% of Americans thinks that Barack Obama is indeed a Muslim, or she's just being provocative. Let's take a look at pictures from, this was her concert in Washington, D.C. last night when she made this call on the fans who were assembled to vote for Barack Obama. And she went on for about 3 or 4 minutes about mentioning various luminaries in American history and the fight for freedom, and now we have an African American in the White House and blah blah blah, and we have to vote for him, and isn't it wonderful to have let's take a listen actually to what she said. That might be more convenient. All right, now she claims that was irony, Annette. We'll get to the debriefing later by the media, but let's take a look at pictures actually coming out of that. You see she did a little twirl there immediately afterwards. Now, she was talking for some 3 or 4 minutes. I noticed that's the only point she did a little twirl, so immediately after the controversial remark. So I wonder, is this body language indicating that she was ready to place that controversial remark, and she knew that it would create a certain amount of buzz around the world. Look at what we're doing here. We're falling right into Madonna's trap and talking about her. But in any case, she has come out then and said, look, I was being ironic. Obviously, I know he wasn't a Muslim. Now, it's very easy for artists in this day and age, if they want to create a bit of buzz, to say something controversial and then to correct it 24 hours later, and knowing that in the meantime you've had front page coverage, you've had headlines, you've had buzz, you've had this, you've had that, everyone talking about you. So I wonder, really, did she do this on purpose?
She still got a number of concerts left to do.
I mean, you would think that her fans wouldn't appreciate that. What's interesting to notice actually is that she was cheered coming out of that statement. So I think people weren't even listening to what she was saying. They were just generally cheering, right?
I've just been a tad cynical because I was just wondering whether in fact she was wanting to sell tickets for upcoming concerts. That's right.
Well, possibly by creating remarks. Now let's take a quick look at the reaction on the internet to this. She said she was being ironic. Now Salon, the website, is saying maybe she needs a little lesson in the meaning of what the word irony is. Saying I was being ironic on stage is a bit ridiculous, says Salon, in the same way that Alanis Morissette's song Ironic was also not very ironic. 10,000 spoons instead of a knife is just silly, really not ironic, right? She later in the concert then said that she would take her clothes off if Obama won. She was showing a little tattoo of Obama she had, which prompted some Twitter users to say, Madonna said she'll strip naked if Obama gets re-elected. Talk about an endorsement for Mitt Romney, right? It also reminds us a little bit of what she did in France back in July when she put up a very controversial shot of Marine Le Pen, the far-right leader here in France, with a swastika superimposed on her forehead. This was in a very rapidly paced music video. Marine Le Pen sued her at the time, but then the charges were dropped. So there you go. She knows how to create controversy and she knows how to create buzz, and I think actually she knows exactly what she's doing and she knew exactly what she was saying. That's my opinion.
Oh, she's certainly the mistress of manipulation. Right. I think we can safely say that without being too offensive. Right. What's more damaging for a US candidate, Madonna's support or that of President Francois Hollande? Dare I ask?
This comes, actually it was the same day they made these remarks. Francois Hollande is over in New York, of course, for the UN General Assembly. And he was answering a journalist's question as to which candidate he would support as the French president, Obama, or indeed Mitt Romney. And he said, are you aware that Mitt Romney never ceases to attack socialist Europe? I'd have to be very careful if anything I say basically in terms of a socialist supporting one of these two candidates could cost them very dearly. It wouldn't suit Romney to have Hollande's support. So he said, so I suppose I should support or endorse Mitt Romney, but I won't. So he was just being a little bit tongue-in-cheek and I suppose a little nod to the fact that an endorsement by him of Mitt Romney would not be good for Mitt Romney.
Now, a follow-up to a story that really captured world headlines last week, and that's the French satirical paper Charlie Hebdo, who caused a stir when they published rather compromising cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad, all in the name of freedom of speech.
Yeah.
Their front page this week picks up on it again.
That's right. Now, I'll just show you this particular article, which is coverage of last week's front page cover. Magazine's nude Mohammed cartoons prompts France to shut embassy schools in 20 countries. That's the cartoonist in question. They were saying it was all for freedom of speech, but you had, police protection of their offices, etc. It created a lot of upset. Now, here is their front page this week. What they've actually done is issued 2 copies of the weekly satirical newspaper. One is a responsible edition, and the other is an irresponsible edition. And let's take a close up, have a close up there. The irresponsible edition, they're talking about the invention of humour with oil and fire. Now, a lot of the criticisms of Charlie Hebdo last week was about pouring fuel onto fire. So this is their way of saying, well, we don't quite agree. And they also have a responsible journal edition, which has nothing in it, essentially. You can see here that there are 2 separate editions, and if you go down through it, I think we have a shot of the responsible edition with not many funny cartoons. In fact, no cartoons at all. So that was their way of saying, basically, that being responsible is very limiting, and what do they expect the public or the government or critics for them to do? Should they pass every cartoon by religious people to see if they're in agreement with it? Should they take into account Benghazi Salafists or extreme Islamists for their point of view? Their point being that really we shouldn't take these people so seriously, and in fact, by taking them very seriously, it's actually increasing the fear, and actually the best thing to do is to laugh about it. That's their point of view.
Now, next to American Vogue magazine and a screenshot of what's being called the greatest correction ever. Now, how did you find this, James?
Well, should we give a little name check to Annette Young, actually, who showed me this earlier this afternoon, and indeed it is very good. This was a correction, as you said, in Vogue magazine. Essentially, I'll read it out. In September, there was a profile of Chelsea Clinton, and a guy called Dan Baer appeared in the profile, and he was mistakenly identified as an interior designer, a very respectable profession. But he is, in fact, deputy. Here we have a photo of him. He is Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights and Labour at the US Department of State. I suppose you could say there's a certain contrast between that and being an interior designer, right?
Yes, well, obviously in the world of Vogue, everybody's a designer, darling.
Right. There you go. So
James
he wanted to
Creedon.
make that clear. He's not an interior designer. He's a
senior serious person.
Yeah, exactly.
James Creedon, thank you
Thanks, Annette.
for that. And that's it from us. Coming up is web news, and a new site gives a fresh perspective on the City of Light. Paris's most famous monuments can now be seen in 3D across the globe. Do stay with us here on France 24.